Let's start immediately, and welcome to this breakout group number 1, where, as Katarina mentioned, the question would be, so what are the whole of the government, whole of country, whole of the society approach to digital foreign policy? What are the benefits? And I would certainly add, what are the challenges, what are the drawbacks? Let's see how it works in practice. The idea is to have an interactive session. We do have 2 guests who are going to set the stage. And Katarina announced them. It's my pleasure to again welcome Ms. Sabina Carli. She's a human rights expert and digital attaché at the permanent mission of the Republic of Slovenia to the UN office and other international organizations in Geneva. And Mr. Jonas Grätz, political affairs officer at the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. But we certainly have a full group of experience, I'm sure. So I do encourage you not only to share your thoughts, questions, suggestions, experiences in the chat, and my colleague Katarina will help feeding that into the main discussion, but also to be courageous enough and raise a hand and grab a mic if you wish. You have 2 options for that. One is in the chat, you can just signal that you want to take a mic, and Katarina will warn me. And the other option is within the participants list. You have an option, raise the hand, and then we'll see, and we'll give you the floor. And please just stop me at any point if there is anything coming straight from the chat to run through that. Okay, let us focus. Let us start or set the stage. I'll just tell you what we want to look within this session. So it is basically what are the benefits and the challenges of the whole of the government approach, which is basically connecting various niches of the public sector that are working together on digital and cyber policies, and whole of the country or whole of the society, which is connecting other segments of the society, such as businesses, civil society, academia, etc., with the work of the government, for developing and implementing the digital foreign policy. And I'll pass the floor as sort of a starter to Sabina, if you wish, to maybe shed a little bit of a light from the perspective of a small country. It's not easy to coordinate all of that in big countries. It might be a little bit easier maybe in small countries, or I may be wrong. But how has Slovenia applied this the digital lenses to its strategic approach, and maybe what are the tools that are used for the strategy to being implemented and reflect on this whole of the government or of the society approach? Sabina.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Sabina.
That was very timely. I was following you on YouTube, and I see that you already introduced me and posed a question, which I happen to know. So let me try to.
Don't reveal everything. Don't reveal the preparations. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for organizing it. And let me first just say that I think that the structure of the event today really gives us also a good intro point to what we are discussing. You organized it in a top-down approach, which is one thing that we need for the whole of the government approach. We need the leadership and the political commitment from the top levels to really focus on the area and introduce it. But then on the other hand, we need the bottom-up approach, where us, the practitioners, can give really the insight into how we could do this and then deliver it on the grounds. Firstly, I would like to say that what we are currently doing seems to be the breaking point between the before and the after. And I don't want to sound apocalyptical, but we are still using the digital health, the digital education, e-education, the terms as digital human rights or human rights in digital era, which in my opinion, in a couple of years will simply be health, will simply be education, will simply be human, whether online or offline. We will have to keep and expand the sphere where we protect them, right? So this is why the discussion today is important, because it's not only ministries of foreign affairs that will be doing it, it's not only the governmental agencies that will be doing it, but it's going to be the whole of the government, and not only that, the whole of society approach. We can all agree that technology has been a game changer, but what brought an additional lens to this is this intersectionality and interoperability between different mechanisms and different activities that we engage with. And this is where I come to your question that I don't know, how did Slovenia do this? I would like to point out three most important points, I think, that we see in our both internal and external policy that are crucial for that. One is strategy, the second one is coordination, and the third one is multi-stakeholders approach. The strategy has been set in the Digital Slovenia program. It is renewed every couple of years, and it is being renewed right now for the period between today and 2027. But we are already learning from the previous period when we were implementing it between 2015 and 2020, that this really gave us a direction. The Digital Slovenia program actually addressed all like the digital skills, the IT management, the e-governance, etc. But then we also introduced additional programs that helped us streamline specific areas of digital policies. I will just point out one of them that is currently being in the process of final confirmation, and that is the National Program for Artificial Intelligence. And the interesting task or like homework that we did, and I was involved back in my capital on this task, was how to add a specific chapter into the program that will be addressing the foreign policy and international cooperation aspects of the program, but at the same time take into account everything else that has been said in other chapters, so that the transparency and ethics chapter will be transmitted to the foreign policy and international cooperation chapter, that the capacity building will also be exported into the external aspects of it. And then we had to look at different stakeholders, partners, international organizations, bilateral links that we have in order to do this task. The second point...
one question, just to clarify, the strategy that you're mentioning was actually the strategy of the MFA, or was the strategy of the government?
It's the governmental strategy.
That's even interesting.
It is rooted in the Public Administration Ministry, which in Slovenia is responsible for the field of digitalization. But what I'm trying to say is that it gives an direction for all the line ministries and agencies also to be introducing this, and also the different line ministries are planned as partners or as implementers even for certain specific goals underneath. Then the second one is coordination. Our cyber ambassador discussed it much more in details in the previous session, but this is the national coordination on the highest level, but then simply also the coordination between different practitioners on the ground. It's me and my colleague here in Geneva, then it's my colleagues in New York, colleagues in Brussels, and also in bilateral representations that we have. And the third point that I want to make in this introductory remarks is the multi-stakeholder approach. If we want this to not only be a whole of a government approach, but whole of society approach, we have to bring on board the actors from civil society, research institutes, private companies, and so on. How this was done in Slovenia is through the Slovenian Digital Coalition, digitalna.si, which works well also in terms of internet, but in Slovenian language, it's basically saying to you that you are digital. And this is what we wanted for Slovenia to be. This harmonizes different actors. It's, for instance, the Chamber of Commerce of Slovenia is involved, bringing businesses on board. Then there's research institutions that are involved. Government is on board with this, but also, and that's interesting, maybe an additional point to this discussions that we have before, it's also municipalities, local actors who are involved in this regard. So this was maybe just a brief introduction. As I said, the coordination, the multi-stakeholder approach, the government is not alone in this, and neither are the public, the private subjects, but also the strategy that gives you the direction.
Thank you, Sabina. I'll steal the role of Katarina for a second because I see Avri has a direct comment on what you said. Avri says, I agree with Sabina, the blending of top-down model for framing and bottom-up multi-stakeholder model for filling in the frame can be challenging, but I believe is the most likely option for blending the online and not online needs. As time goes on, more and more we find the situations we deal with in life involve the blend of online with the not online components. Thanks, Avri. Next time I'm not going to read it, you'll grab the mic. Let's move on to Jonas. Jonas, welcome back. And it was not fair that you were actually speaking at another panel at the same time. but thanks for rejoining. Well, you heard some bits that Sabina mentioned, but it is interesting. What Sabina mentioned was actually that the strategy, if we stick to the first pillar that you mentioned, Sabina, strategy, is actually on the level of the government. And on the other hand, in Swiss case, it is the Swiss federal department which has, well, with the others, but the Swiss federal department is taking this foreign policy, if I'm not wrong, or correct me. And so how do you see this relevance when it comes to the whole of a government approach? And what are some of the good, well, even the bad practices, if you wish, in this process of putting all together? Jonas.
Yeah, thanks, and sorry for being late. I was somehow listening to the third panel, not speaking there, but just listening in to Christian and then the colleague from Sweden. So yeah, thanks for the question. Well, no, actually, as Ambassador Schneider also pointed out, in Switzerland we have several strategies kind of aligned with each other, and they are actually endorsed by the government. Although they are different policy owners, all of the strategies have been endorsed by the whole government, and that's, I think, is crucial because it forces all the stakeholders to work together in crafting the strategies, because everyone can do a submission in the end when it comes up to the Federal Council, to the government, and that's, I think, important that everyone is involved in the strategies to make them match, because yeah, we have the strategy Digital Switzerland, we have the national cybersecurity strategy with the foreign policy element. Now we also have the digital foreign policy strategy, and all of those have to be on top of each other. But that's not even the most important thing. I mean, the strategy, it's useful, but I think that the most important thing is to have in mind, to have the right mindset for cooperation, and to really see that digital issues are so important and need the whole of government approach. And why is this so? Because, as also other speakers have pointed out, it's so quickly developing, and governments often are a bit slower, and they have difficulties in catching up, and therefore it's really important that all of the stakeholders are working together, also to increase output legitimacy, if you wish, of the government. And also, it is also a new policy field, and it means that the capacities to understand the relevance are often lacking, both in the diplomatic field, but also the technical experts. They also often do not understand the diplomatic or foreign policy implications of what they're doing. So there really needs to be this match of the different strata and communities, and also a good communication, trying to understand each other's way of thinking and also way of talking about maybe the same issues, which might be really different. So yeah, reflecting on what I said on the strategies, you need a process which includes all the stakeholders and where everyone can voice his or her opinion. And then you also need the continuous engagement across the levels of hierarchy and across the different specialized agencies, because you need everyone to really stay abreast of the fast-moving situation. And you also need a supportive culture in the administrations and the right skill set. Because if you want to cooperate, you cannot focus on your own competencies, but you need to have really skilled people who are willing to engage with others who don't have kind of boundaries in mind or are afraid of engaging with others because they feel that they are not that they will not be able to cope with this kind of cooperation. So you really need to focus on the outcomes and on the skills if you want to engage in a whole of government and whole of society approach. That's it from my side.
Thanks, Jonas. Jorge mentioned, as somebody said, that Switzerland is not governed but coordinated, and in that sense, I guess it is. Well, you have a sort of a unique experience in Switzerland for many reasons. But my question to you is, knowing the complexity of institutions, and for instance, from the experience of being engaged in internet governance discussions, I remember Thomas Seider, who is also with us now, as someone who was probably the most prominent on behalf of BACOM, which is right the technical authority in a way, the technology authority in a way, telecom authority. And yet now what I also teased Thomas at some point was that he's actually the ambassador. So it is quite interesting to see that now we have ambassadors which are coming not from the MFAs, but are deeply involved in the practice. And on the other hand, you have a lot of work which diplomats and ministers of foreign affairs are working, stepping out of their sort of zone of comfort. Now the question back to you is, on the practical level, how did you manage, if you, on a Swiss level, to coordinate these different institutions where everyone has their own focus, but also certainly some of the interests, a lot of, sort of turf battles also, a lot of different focus and so on. Is there any tip that you could give to others how to coordinate to develop such a national policy? That's back to you, Jonas.
Oh, back to me. I thought you were asking Thomas, because
Thomas can jump in, of course. Yeah, but I was teasing him to jump in.
I wasn't sure.
No, you can reflect.
No, it's basically what I said. What I said before. Well, on the one hand, you have the strategy process, which somehow forces you to work together because you want to have a document which is endorsed by everyone, and which also has some coherence also with other documents and so on. And then, as I said, as digital policy is so fast moving, and you need to be focused on the result that you want to deliver to the people and to the communities, you really need to liaise with others who might be more experienced than you are in the specific field. And this also requires the overarching, of course, framework of the strategy and of the political kind of how do you say it, the political tasks that you are getting. But in the end, it's about really connecting the different fields, areas of expertise, and therefore I emphasize also the culture, the culture and the skills that people need to interact in an efficient way. That you are really focusing who has the resources that I need in the specific situation, and whose views do I need to take into account, and then you need to build this network of contacts within and also outside, of course, the administration. There's one example I want to give here. It's more from the national level. It's the National Cybersecurity Center that has been built up since last year under the Federal Cybersecurity Delegate. And here it's really easy going information sharing that we have established also since COVID-19, where we are on a daily call with him and his team, and we get really the information what they are doing. They know what we are doing, and so these are also the tools that you need to use if you want to build this whole of government exchange and cooperation. That has been made easier by digital tools, of course, and COVID-19 has been a booster for us in a way. But this is really a good example that you have these daily exchanges, and with this, you know who's doing what. And then in case you need, you can just approach the individual person and you already know what everyone is tasked, and you can ease up the information flow. I think that's really important.
If I can just quickly jump in, since
yes,
I've been mentioned, this is Thomas. Just to complement what Jonas says. In the end, like what I said in the roundtable, digital is all over, and everything has a digital component. So nobody knows everything. So the foreign ministry, in our case, has a knowledge about the geopolitical landscape that we don't have. But we have, coming from the media and telecom and internet governance, markets and regulation, we have knowledge that they don't have. And so we try not to fight against each other, but who is the best and who has the responsibility, but to cooperate. Normally we succeed. And then we are basically stronger together because we're a small country, we have limited resources. So we are forced to cooperate, not just because of our political system. And this is the only way to actually get things done more and more, because things are, as I said, we have to use collective intelligence to cope with artificial intelligence. That's what I would say. Thanks.
Thanks, Thomas. And I think the 2 points that you mentioned, one is this sort of we have to work together because we are a small country that really reflects many of countries around that need to put all the resources together. And the second one is that, Jonas, that you mentioned sort of the understanding of who has the resources and how to put them together and focusing on the results. And that's probably a good tip when it comes to shaping the whole culture and the digital strategy. But back to Sabina, certainly if anyone wants to jump in, please raise a hand or just signal in the chat. There was a comment from Jorge before I pass to Sabina. Katerina, you can probably reflect on that one and if there was anything else.
No, there was just a comment from Jorge and Avri. And Avri asked Jorge if people living in Switzerland have the same view on what Jonas said. And then Jorge answered that there is a lot of networking going on inside the government and with the stakeholders through multi-stakeholder exchange bodies, which include the annual bottom-up Swiss IGF. So all in all, this is quite a bottom-up approach. But other than that, there was nothing else. And I'm looking forward to more of your questions and comments. Back to you, Vlad.
Thanks, Katerina. We have some more minutes, so please do raise a hand if you want to jump in. Sabina, back to you. Certainly, you can reflect on any of those questions on shaping, developing this culture and communication strategy. But I do also have another question on a practical level, since you're a practitioner in Geneva. Sabina, how do you as a diplomat who is posted in Geneva actually cooperate and communicate throughout different ministries in Slovenia for digital or related to digital issues?
Oh, thank you. Interesting question. Absolutely, very, very practical one. Well, according to the division of labor in our government and among our ministries and governmental agencies, it is always the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who coordinates and who at least keeps an eye over the matters that are going on abroad. So it is always someone from the ministry, the one department or the one person who's the most appropriate, the most knowledgeable about certain field, and then they would communicate further through different line ministries, either Ministry of Public Administration, Ministry of Education, sometimes Ministry of Health, when my colleague is dealing with the WHO and digital initiatives and so on. So technically it would always go this way, but of course, very informally, we are very often in touch also directly just to fine tune some of our steps. What we really see in the recent months is that COVID not forced us, but reminded us how easy it is to schedule a Zoom call or a Skype call or simply a WhatsApp call and discuss certain things, even in between the stakeholders that would not communicate in the past. So I do agree with one of the comments in the chat box that the COVID had a certain impact on that. And this coordination and communication also brings me to a very challenging, yet I believe one of the crucial things that we need to take care of in our whole of the government thinking is data management and knowledge management in the field of digital affairs. It's what we communicate is already represents part of the knowledge that is gathering somewhere. Depends on the ministry, depends on the government, how they store these data or these information. But if we want to apply digital tools in the future, if we want to apply artificial intelligence at the end of the day, how we manage, how we store, and how we analyze these data and these information that are coming. Imagine information coming from New York, from Paris and OECD. This study in Brussels said this, and so on. Where this ends and how we will approach these information, analyze them, and use them in the future will be most probably one of the turning points in how well we perform and how well we adjust in the future. Just wanted to connect these two, communication out, but also how we store and how we analyze.
To what extent are you aware how much this is changing the whole setup of the ministry? With the Zoom calls and all of that, it's actually flattening the hierarchy of the whole administration, where you can pick a phone call to anyone, stakeholder or partner in different ministry or, diplomatic service. And on the other hand, introducing this sort of a walking the talk when it comes to data management and knowledge management using digital tools will also probably radically change, or radically on the positive side, change the way the ministries work and the government work with the stakeholders. Are we ready for that? I mean, okay, you're the younger generations, both you and Jonas, but how do we, this is going to be quite a systematic change of culture within the ministries and government.
Well, this is indeed rather a personal question than an official answer from the Republic of Slovenia that I will be delivering right now. But as you said, as a representative of a younger generation, this, in my opinion, is what is enriching and what is leading us forward. Everyone having not a say in the final decision, of course, but a say in the input, a say in the bringing additional information to the table. And then the final decision makers collect the right information, produce the right policies, and then have us execute them. But of course, diplomacy being, as my professor once said, an old lady, this indeed changes the practice dramatically. So, well, we will need to adjust. Maybe another buzzword that we are hearing very often, but is also, in my opinion, important is the skills that we have, the competencies that we have. Our diplomatic academy recently introduced a completely new module specifically on digital diplomacy, on digital tools, on how to use them, how others use them, examples of good practices, and so on, because that's the work that we are operating in. Some even more because they are stationed in even more progressive capitals. Some are shocked by what the countries are achieving already. Some maybe less because their work is not that much connected to that. But indeed, that's what ahead of us, and we need to be prepared to it as much as well as we can.
Thanks a lot. There was a good comment from Sirocco that age is not decisive, and it's agility of mind. And there was a comment from Avri that coming from a bigger country, I would love to see greater cooperation. I think the same logic holds for bigger countries and small ones. Just a scaling factor make for different practical problems. Thanks a lot. I guess, Jonas, if you want, you have 10 seconds to add a final note before they kick us out and we end up in a plenary room. Jonas, do you want?
Yeah, just to echo what has been said about the digital technologies, I think it's also a blessing for us for improving coordination. As I highlighted this call we have now with the NCSC, it was now made under COVID situation. We didn't have it before, and it will probably endure beyond. And there are many other examples that are really improving information exchange, and so this is not only negative, but has also positive implications for our work. Thanks.